Welcome back to Man on Quest New Horizons. I'm dear darling, as we see what's going on on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today. As we sort of just shift everything about here, you've got to get more comfortable. You've got to have your workspace. It's got to be exactly as you want it. Ergonomic chair, you know, raise it up a little bit. Whoop, hydraulics slowly wearing away. Yes, I don't know, it's a bit weird. Yeah, what have I been up to today? Not really much. Just honestly, just sort of relaxing, playing some games. All that good stuff. I recorded some Life is Strange earlier today. I might record a bit more later because the story's certainly taken a twist, is what I'll say. If you're wondering which episode I just recorded, I've recorded episode 6, I think, so you'll see that in a few weeks. But anyway, hello everyone. Right now in Fawnhollow, it's 4:38 PM on Sunday, September 19th, 2021. I don't really have any big new news. Wait, what? What did she say? I can't remember now. It doesn't even matter. But yeah, nothing really happening. I suppose what's happening in UK news, apparently, was it like shops can now use Imperial measurements or something, when they sell things, and of course this is brought about much confusion, I suppose, in the UK about our weird usage and mix of Imperial and metric units. My dear canopy, we've had this a million times. I don't know either why the UK's got such a weird mix of metric and Imperial. I myself am all for the metric group, and mainly, metric is just a better system. I know. And it's not necessarily because people like to use arguments like one of them is more intuitive than the other. I don't necessarily think that's true, because I think that's kind of more to do with which one you've grown up with. Like the one that always comes to mind is like with Celsius and then Fahrenheit. One is like, oh, one of them feels distinctly like one of them makes more sense to some people than others. Like the argument, I suppose, I'm trying to, sorry, I can't phrase this properly. The argument I hear about using one over the other is that one of them is more intuitive than the other, and people often like to point back to Celsius because, it makes sense. Pure water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius and boils at 100 degrees Celsius. Well, that makes sense from a scientific perspective. I think for an everyday sort of person usage, that doesn't really make sense to me. It's not really it doesn't make sense to me, but it's like, okay, I know that 0 degrees, if the temperature outside right now is like 0 degrees centigrade or something, or the temperature of this to cook this at 100 degrees centigrade, I'd be like, oh, okay, if that's the temperature at which pure water freezes, or that's the temperature at which pure water boils. Okay, I don't really have a concept of what that's like, apart from literally from a scientific perspective. So I think from an intuitive perspective, it doesn't make sense really as much. I think whichever one you grew up with is the one which is going to feel much more sensible to you. I hear an argument that Fahrenheit's got, since it's like a smaller unit, it's got smaller denomination, so we should use that. That's so stupid. No, not the use of Fahrenheit. Well, I mean, Fahrenheit is a bit strange, I think, but I think that argument's a bit redundant. I think actually for Celsius and Fahrenheit, it doesn't really matter all that much. If anything, maybe you should be like, oh, we should use Kelvin, but I think people probably don't want to work in for like 300, 400 degrees.
So
Fahrenheit and Celsius is one which doesn't actually matter, and the reason I think it doesn't really matter too much is I think the major benefit for Celsius versus Imperial versus metric systems of units is the fact that a metric conversion between similar units of different magnitudes is far easier, because everything scales in powers of 10, which is, seeing as that's the base number our number system works on, is considerably easier to think about. Did we have a cell fruit one? I honestly can't remember. Let's just cell fruit. If we didn't, then we didn't. Rather than Fahrenheit having a very bewildering system. Like, you can take distance, for example. The metric, like, I'm sure you've heard this argument many times, and and I understand it's not particularly easy to just switch over different counting systems just like that, especially ones which have been very ingrained in society. It means, at very minimum, updating all the road signs, which is not going to be the cheapest endeavour, shall we say. But let's live in a fancy land where sort of things like this can happen instantaneously. Metric just makes more sense. Like, you take distance, for example. You got a meter. How much is a meter? Oh, a meter is a meter long. Like, you don't really have much of an intuitive sense for it unless you really know it. But then it's like, okay, well, now you don't want to talk on larger scales. We got a kilometer. That's 1,000 meters. Conversion, simple. You want to talk on smaller scales? Easy. You've got a millimeter. That's a thousandth of a meter. And you've got centimeter, because apparently centimeters, 100th of a meter is popular enough. That sort of length is popular enough that we need to have a unit talking about it. But then distance in Imperial is very strange. Like, you got an inch. Well, I guess the standard would be a yard. is that the meter comparison, I suppose, with Imperial, and a yard being about a third of a meter, I think. It's slightly more than that, I think, but then I can't quite recall, or maybe it's slightly less. I don't know. Forgive me, I don't really work in Imperial measurements all that often, so it's a little bit confusing. And you got an inch. How many inches in? No, wait, no. Then you got a foot, and it's 3 feet in a yard, and 12 inches in a foot. I don't know if there's a denomination smaller than an inch, to be honest. At that point, you just start working with fractions of an inch, which is, it feels like it's like fair, but not the greatest system, I must say. And then if you want to go more than a yard, like, how much is a mile? Isn't a mile like 1,624 or something yards? Which is just nonsensical. Then what's above miles? See, like, even though there are things that you don't use very often, distances above miles, distances above kilometers, for a metric system, at least in metric systems, you can certainly convert them a lot easier. You'd be like, oh, what's, you know, like a megameter, I guess is what it is, and a gigameter. Like, even those aren't very common words, but it's at least easily understandable to being 10 to the 9 or 10 to the, is that right? 10 to the 9? No, 10 to the 6 and 10 to the 9 meters. Well, I don't know what the words would be for Imperial. Imperial have a lot of measurements. There's a furlong. I don't know how long that is. I think that must be less than a mile or something. I know the final furlong is a phrase used in horse riding for like the last stretch of a race, so it can't be much longer than a mile. I don't know what you got above a mile, to be honest. You just got miles all the way up, if anything. Now, if it's not to diss, like, if you use Imperial, I'm not going to be like, oh, you're dumb or something. That's obviously, like, just a nonsense phrase. Like, I know there's a whole metric versus Imperial debate, and while I am on the side of metric because I like the easy conversions between different scales of the sort of thing, like, if you know how to use Imperial, just continue using Imperial. It's kind of like, it doesn't actually take that long, I'd imagine, to learn a new unit system. I think you'd get used to it pretty quickly, even though instinctively you would just think of it in a different metric, sorry, counting system, unit system instead. It's just like, I understand the infrastructure costs are far too high, really, to replace all these sort of things in the first place, so really it will never happen. But, like, I understand the history behind Imperial units as well. Or, I don't know on the specifics, but I know generally it's because that's, you know, when you don't have standardised things, each countries and different places come up with their own different definitions of what's exactly a useful measurement, and then they have their own sort of ambiguous phrasing. I'm just surprised at how well it's preserved. This is smug. So this must be Raymond's. I'm surprised how well, not well, but how often Imperial units have preserved themselves throughout different things, for things which don't even make sense. And I think UK is probably the best example, probably of a country which, for some reason, mixes and matches them, despite being in Europe and tooting how awesome metric is. For some reason, so many other things are just done in an Imperial system instead. Like, oh, you know, you like. How far did you run today? Oh, I went on a 10 kilometer run. Awesome, cool. How far is the distance from like this to the next city? Oh, it's about like 30 miles or something. Why do we use both these systems intermingled? And I suppose, as I think about this, because obviously there's discussion about it, and people being like, oh no, we switch back over to Imperial. I don't believe that's actually what the announcement was. I think the announcement was that now shops can also use Imperial, or can just use Imperial rather than it being forced to use metric or something. I can't remember. Apparently a lot of older generations still use Imperial, which is fair enough. I guess because metric probably wasn't standardized till somewhat recently. So things which are much more recent we tend to measure metrically, and things which are much older we use Imperial. So like distances between cities, that's quite an old thing. We measure that in Imperial. I mean, I suppose modern day jogs and like exercise routines and that sort of thing, much more modern, obviously. So we do it in kilometers and that sort of thing. You know, pubs, always drinks and sort of things. They're in pints, gallons if you really want to drink that much, and quarts and shots. I don't really know if shots is an actual unit or not, but still. But then when you're like, I don't know, what would you measure in milliliters? The only thing I can think of is science experiments, which is kind of stupid because science uses metric anyway. Actually, that's a good question. Do scientists in America use metric or Imperial? I've got to imagine they use metric, and it's just sort of like you just got to learn a different unit system. Which I'd imagine you just sort of get used to it. Like, you know, there's conversions between Imperial and metric, you can think about it. Although, annoyingly, for some reason we had to learn it in our GCSE, like, maths maths thing, but it was a thing we were never taught in class. It was just like an addendum. I remember it was on the curriculum, like you can check the specification. I remember I was reading through just to see if I knew everything, and then one of the things was just like conversion between metric and imperial units, and I was like, huh? So I just like wrote them on a sticky note and I stuck them to my computer monitor to remember them. So I still remember some of them. Like I remember 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds roughly. So reverse that, 1 pound is roughly 450 grams in my head. So that sort of gives a sort of bit of a basis. 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. And then from that I can remember the things like 12 inches in a foot and then 3 feet in a yard. So then I can do that conversion. Don't remember miles. Miles to a kilometre, it's like 1 kilometre is 1 mile is 1.6 kilometres, I think. And you might say, has this ever become in particularly useful to you? Not really. I suppose with the advent of technology, the easiest thing to do is just sort of like Google it, be like, how many whatever's in and whatever. So yeah, but basically I sort of just do like one-way conversions. You might be like, what about the Celsius to Fahrenheit conversion? I don't remember exactly. It's something like divide by 9 times by 5 plus 32. Or the inverse of that. Or some sort of different ordering about that sort of thing. The thing I always remember is I just randomly guess as -40 is the same in both temperature systems. 0 degrees centigrade is 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and 100 degrees Celsius. No, wait, what? 100 degrees Fahrenheit is around 40 degrees Celsius, I think. So then I just assume it's a linear scale and sort of go up and down. So if someone's like, oh, it was 70 degrees Fahrenheit, okay, I'll be like, okay, that's somewhere between if 32 degrees Fahrenheit is 0 and then 100 degrees Fahrenheit is 40, then that means 70 degrees Fahrenheit is probably around 20 somewhere. Let's see if that's actually right. Hold on. 70 FNC 21 degrees. So you know that works out pretty well. Hold on. 100 degrees Fahrenheit. What is that in Celsius? 37.8. Oh, for some reason I thought it was 40. Okay, well, 100 is 38. 100 degrees Fahrenheit is 38 degrees Celsius. So I guess I could try and figure out exactly. Oh, there you are, Raymond. Oh, there you are, Perry. Exactly what the conversion rate. I know it's the. Okay, let's think about it. Apparently we haven't talked to Raymond for ages. So it's definitely plus 32. Okay, we're doing Celsius to Fahrenheit. It's definitely plus 32 because 0 needs to map to 32. So we need -40 to map to -40. So -32 makes it -72. Divide by 9 gives about -8 times by 5. So that's going backwards as you -32 divided by 9 times by 5. Right? So then you must times by 9 divide by 5 plus 32. That's how you do Celsius to Fahrenheit, right? Yeah, that makes sense. So then 40 degrees Fahrenheit times by 9, 360, divided by 5, 72, plus 32 is about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, there you go. See, easy conversions, just off top of a dome piece. Although, certainly having to remember that is not the easiest thing in the world, and nor particularly convenient. I guess we'll see if Audie's on crafting. So I can't particularly recommend it. Definitely go down the calculator route. If you don't have a calculator route, then, you know, I suppose you can do those sort of rough estimations in your head. Oh, Audie, you're ill. Let's go get you some medicine. Let's go practice medicine. But I don't know why UK has such a mix of things. Like, you know, like weights, like every single measurement, like all of us SI standard units, for some reason mix both imperial and metric. You know, okay, distance we already talked about. Distances you run, like, is a metric, and then distances you drive is imperial. All speeds are imperial for some reason. All their like speed signs are in miles per hour for some reason. What do we measure in inches and feet? Height, we for some reason measure in both feet and inches and centimeters. So I know my height in both. How tall am I? I'm about 180 centimeters, which is about 5'11", I believe. So, you know, just in case anyone asks either, I can give you that. What else do you measure in feet and inches and yards? You know, like, it's random things that you probably won't even think about. Like material, if you want to buy like material, like you're a tailor or something, you want to buy like seams or rolls of fabric. You got to buy it in yards for some reason, I think, instead of meters. I don't know if that's changed. At least the last time I went to an arts and crafts store, I bought it in yards, which is just wild. Let me think. What else do you buy in inches? I don't know. I can't even think of anything you work with inches. Apart from it's a battle of inches. So, I suppose the plus side is that I have a reasonable idea of how big an inch... I have a reasonable idea of both metric and imperial systems, but honestly it's a bit of a waste, isn't it? But still. I guess it's useful? Kind of. It's never been particularly all that noteworthy, I must say. Especially if conversions come quite easily just through Google. But yeah, okay, other SI units, so that's meters. You got weights, which the SI standard for some reason is a kilogram instead of a gram, and I don't really know why, but still. Like weights, how heavy are you? For some reason, people always, well, at least when I was growing up, people always used to talk in stone and ounces. I think I'm like 10.8 stone or something. That sounds about right. I'm like 60, you know, last time I checked, I was somewhere in the 60 to 70 kilogram range. It's been a while, I don't quite recall. Definitely probably put on a bit of weight during the lockdown and that sort of thing, which I should probably lose at some point, but that's neither here nor there. What fish is that? We need to catch butterfly fish. That's a sea fish. I think it's a sea fish. But also we do it in kilograms now, you know. When you buy meat by the pound, but, you know, you buy fruit by the kilogram, or grams, I guess. Is that true? I don't know. I think you kind of do. So now, I mean, I'm trying to think back now and think about it to the supermarket scales. They have both, because I'm not sure if they've actually changed the sort of digital to digital scales now, but they always used to have analog scales. In the supermarket, it'd just be hanging there, and you can like put it on, and it just like be like a radial dial, which go around, and it's got both imperial and metric units listed around the edges, of which you can, you know, pick and choose exactly what you want to judge by. But things are by the pound instead of by the kilogram sometimes. What's up? This one, we don't need that one. It's all confusing. It's all totally messed up. What is this crazy world we live in? I don't think we need any of these. So we'll sell them gladly. And we'll customize. Buy some medicine. Buy some medicine. What other SI units have we got? We got amps. Okay, that one I guess we kind of, you know, you only do metric. That's not medicine. What am I doing? Where's medicine? There's medicine. I mean, I don't even think it is an imperial version of amps, because I guess amps is quite a modern invention, so it's just metric that we had. I guess if it's a scientific unit, it's only going to have a metric system for it, because it was invented within reasonably, or at least scientists were probably like, there's no way we're going to work with imperial units, that's dumb, and switch over to metric systems as soon as they could. So amps, that's all in metric. Candelas, I guess, is a metric, probably. That's a unit of light intensity, I believe. Yeah, candela. Yeah, that's right. No, light intensity is the lux, right? That's like candelas per area or something. Per meter squared. Okay, so what else we got? There's 7 of them. So we've got weight. So we've got kilograms, meters, seconds, time. Interesting. We don't have. It's not like an imperial unit of time, is there? Actually, no. I just remember seconds. Seconds is both, because you got seconds. Like when you go upwards, you go, instead of going like 100 seconds is something, you go 60 seconds to a minute, 60 minutes to an hour, 24 hours to a day. Weird, isn't it? I understand the 24 hours in a day part, because at least we got it synced up with something which is we use in everyday life, which is the rotation of the Earth, and one full rotation of the Earth. But come on, 60 minutes to 60 minutes to an hour, 60 hours to a day. What? 60 seconds to a minute, 60 minutes to an hour? I mean, I say that doesn't sound right. But to be fair, there's justification for this metric system at least, because 60 is a very nicely divisible number. It's got a lot of different factors to it, you know? Divisible by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15. It can be split up into multiple different systems, which makes it very useful. I suppose when it comes to sort of everyday talk, to be like, oh, you know, half an hour, third of an hour, fifth of an hour, that sort of thing. While 10 does not have a nice sort of divisible property, which is completely fair enough. But why is it that when we go up in imperial units, and when we go down in metric units, you know, you don't have like a 60th of a second, you've got a millisecond, which is a thousandth of a second, nanosecond, a 10 to the minus 6 seconds, a microsecond, 10 to the minus 9. Why is this the way we are? How did that even come to be? I guess the people who came up with the imperial system for measurements of, you know, time didn't really need such smaller divisions in a second, or you only go like fractions of a second. It just sort of didn't catch on. They didn't see the need to invent a different unit, which would be like whatever many parsecs or something equals a second. Parsec I think is a distance, isn't it? Is like a distance like light can travel in a year or something. Oh no, that's 1 light year. Maybe it's no, it must be in 1 second, right? That sounds about right. And forgive me, it's a bit scientific, a bit above my pay grade. Actually, like, I guess the pay grade part of it would just be like googling it, so it's not really above my pay grade. But still, okay, so we got meters, seconds, kilograms, amps, candela. We got the mole, but that's just like a quantity, so you can't really have a metric amount of that. How much is it? 6 times 10 to the minus 23. What's that defined by? Oh, I used to know this because I did study chemistry. It's something to do with carbon, isn't it? Like carbon 12. How many carbon 12 molecules there are in 1 kilogram? 1 gram of carbon? How's a mole design? So what's the other one? Hold on. Amps? Oh, a joule. That must be the other one, right? I mean, that's kind of metric as well, I suppose. Hold on. SI units. Is that all of them? Kilogram, meter, second, ampere. Oh, Kelvin. It's not a joule. Duh. I mean, Kelvin is just Celsius, just scaled up like, or scaled down like 273. No, scaled up. Scaled up 273 degrees. So, you know, that's kind of like, it's got, we already talked about the imperial unit of temperature. Candela, yeah, mole. Wait, sorry, how? That's not what I meant to, I didn't mean to Google SI unit, I meant to Google mole. How's a mole defined? It's Avogadro constant, I do know that. Revising a previous definition about wait, hold on. The definition of mole was adopted in November 2018 as 107 SI base units, revising a previous definition that specified 1 mole as the amount of substance in 12 grams of carbon-12, an isotope of carbon. 12 grams? Why would it be 12 grams? I don't know if there's 12 of them. Okay, it's been quite a bit of time since I've done any of that sort of chemistry study, so it's not really quite at the front of my brain, I must be honest. But yeah, if you think like my conclusion to this is, oh, you know, imperial units are stupid, kind of. Like, I think they're less clear for conversions between similar units in the same genre, I guess, but I'm not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater. It's sort of a situation where I understand how they come to pass and I understand how they're ingrained with us in society. What's stupid is the fact that we, for some reason in the UK, stick with both. And now there's some sort of legislation which is like, we're going to kind of switch to one, but not actually totally switch over. It's just, I think I read it was essentially just grocery stores or whatever now can do just imperial or something, but most of them already have like metric stuff in place in the first place, so if anything we're just going to add imperial units and metric units or something like that for like the elderly who still use that system, and you know, fair enough. Although I will say most youngsters, I suppose nowadays, certainly do work in metric, I think, most of the time. But there's a few things which I think will probably be imperial to stay. For like drinks, I think like pints and that sort of thing, I think that's going to stay imperial probably till the end of time. Speeds will probably, I can see a future in where like speeding limits and that sort of thing get both imperial and metric units written on signs or things like that. I can't see a future where it's completely overwritten, but maybe, you know, if there's that future where both are written on signs, then one of them maybe will perhaps surpass the other. Actually, I don't even think I'll ever have both written on signs, because that would just be confusing, wouldn't it? You look at a sign and you see both like, I don't know, 60 and 80 on it, and you're like, what? I guess it'd be more like 60 and 96, right? Be honestly rather confusing, so I guess that probably won't happen. But yeah, so I guess those two will probably not ever switch. I can see weight switching. I can see what else could switch. I mean, temperature's already just Celsius. I know, there's probably like people have explained it better. People have delved into the history behind imperial and metric units. But I gotta say, there's just an absurd amount of crazy, weird imperial units. Like, here's a question: if you're American and you're watching this, which of these like Imperial units do you actually use on a regular basis? Like, okay, easy answers. You probably use an inch pretty often. You probably use a yard and a mile, all fairly often. Fair enough. You probably use Fahrenheit very often. You probably use pounds, ounces. I can't imagine you use stone very often, because stone's kind of heavy, isn't it? Like stone, or maybe you do, I don't know. But I feel like instead of saying like X stone, you'll probably just be like 14 pounds or something, right? I guess if you talking really high numbers, you probably would use stone, right? Okay, stone, ounce, and pound. But like, why are there so many random Imperial units anyway? I guess it's more like we classify anything which is not metric as Imperial, which maybe that's just the definition of Imperial units. I don't know. Because there's things like furlong. I doubt the average American uses furlong particularly often. There's very strange things as well. Like, hold on, I bet if I Google it, I'll probably come up with some answers to the question. Weird Imperial units. Let's have unusual units of measurement. Hammer unit, rack, a hand. You probably like never use those, but yet we classify them all under Imperial. Isn't that weird? Despite the fact that Imperial is almost kind of defined by the fact it's just like commonly used what's the word? Not systemized, but like non-uniform conversion systems of units, but we put them all under the same sort of umbrella. I don't know, why is that? Who knows? Not I. I do not have an answer for you there. A light nanosecond. A metric foot. A horse? Oh yeah, that's like horses and hands. Like, aren't horses meant to be like 8 hands tall or something? I don't know if that's right. A hand is 4 inches. Okay, I think a horse is probably a bit taller than 32 inches, but still. What are we doing? We're chopping wood in these last few minutes. I don't know. Imperial systems, they're just kind of confusing to a person who predominantly uses metric. I use metric whenever I can. If I get the opportunity to use Imperial, I'll be like, nah. Unless someone is talking Imperial, and then I'll just do the conversion to metric in my head. Because it's just like, it's a sad part, not a sad part I suppose, but like, the reality part is like, you're going to be able to think in whatever metric, system of units that you've been brought up in. So whenever someone says, oh, you know, stand like 2 meters away from me, you know, perhaps a bit of real talk right here. If you're American and you've been brought up using yards and meters, you'll just be like, what is that? 2 meters, that's like 6 yards. Is that right? Or is it 6 feet? Oh, 6 feet, hold on. Yeah, wait. Is it 3 feet in a yard? Wait, what? 3 feet in a yard. A yard's about 90 centimeters, right? 1 yard equals meters. Yeah, okay. I actually got it confused in my head there. So if you corrected me, I spotted my mistake. Don't you worry. It's just like, I don't know. You only have an intuitive sense of things based off what you're used to. And you know what the sad thing is? D&D, everything's written in like yards, right? Instead of meters. I've no concept of large distance of yards. Like if you told me like 1 yard, I'd be like, okay, that's about 90 meters, 90 centimeters. But anything which goes too much further than that, I'm just like, I actually just can't picture it in my mind. But anyway, should we wrap this episode up here? I actually can't believe I talked about 29 minutes like straight. I didn't even realise how quickly time flew. But yeah, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares are greatly appreciated. Join the Dear Darling Discord. Follow me on Twitter down below. Hope to see you again. But for now, it's all very well. So until next time, bye bye for now.